This is the 3 a.m. conversation that you really want to be a fly on the wall for. This is the Sleepless Knights podcast, hosted by Mr. Lobo of Cinema Insomnia and my producer Paul Sanders of BESTOW TV. Those who listen know it's unlike all those other podcasts. This one is for us night people. We obsess on pop culture, we talk movies, talk shop, get weird, do interviews, answer your questions. We take you to the airport and to the laundromat. Okay, well, sometimes we get lost, but we promise you that we will go where no podcast has gone before. Dare you put down as little as $1 American and support our next show? We're getting it ready for you now. All you can hear for $1 or more an episode. Please join us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Sleepless Knights Podcast, all one word, SLEEPLESS KNIGHTS Only one D in podcast, even though we emphasize the odd in our pODDcast. We want normal people with real jobs to find us. Sleepless Knights Podcast on Patreon. We'd like to take this time to thank all of our Patreon supporters. Our executive producer for tonight's podcast is Anita Rivnick. Thanks, Anita. All systems go.
For the last time, you can't move the piece like that. That's checkers. This is chess. And please don't eat the game pieces. That's a result of your higher metabolism as a giant gorilla. It's also why you can no longer maintain a buzz. What do you mean? You don't know the word metabolism. Bigger body equals needing more fuel. I do know that the human head weighs 8 pounds. Technically it weighs closer to 10 to 11 pounds, but I'm unsure how we got from metabolism to this subject. Can you please make your move? Understood, but don't you think it's morally wrong to quote, eat humans like snacks, end quote? I kind of don't care if they have a GUI center. Can we change the subject? That is interesting. I didn't know all the facts about fertilizer. Now there's some new things to clog up my database. Thank you for that.
Okay, I'm gonna try it.
Wait, I think they are back from their meeting.
Hey, gal, start recording episode titled... What is the name of this episode? You know what? Insert appropriate title.
Affirmative. Recording now.
All right, ready? In 3, 2, 1.
Attention, Sleepless Knights. Thank you for consuming this OSI 74 product broadcast, live from the Black Knight satellite. For optimum performance and safety, your host, Mr. Lobo, asks that you please listen to these instructions carefully. When in a hospital or other healthcare facility, observe the restrictions on the use of electronic devices. Switch off before boarding an aircraft to prevent interference with communications systems. Do not operate this device in the presence of flammable gases or fumes, chemical plants, or where blasting operations are in progress. Always listen hands-free while driving a vehicle. Failure to observe these instructions may lead to immediate termination. It's time now for the show to begin. Thank you. Have a very pleasant evening.
Hooray! We made it! This is our 1-year anniversary, 3 years in the making. Celebrate! Hoopla, hoopla, hoopla! Yes! Celebrate good times. Come on! Oh, no, wait, we probably shouldn't sing any more of that, right?
That's enough of that, yeah.
Yeah, the High Council of Human Consumption is going to come down on us like a sack of wet phone books.
We've got our eyes on them, and they definitely have their eyes on us. So.
Yeah, they definitely have their eyes on. They're going through our garbage. It's a bad scene. But we're having a great time, even though we're oppressed by copyright police. We're having a great time.
because we've been doing this for 52 episodes. That's one day for 52 weeks, not in a row.
No. Don't do the math.
There was a gap there. How long was the gap? Or we're not supposed to try to figure that out. We're supposed to leave that nebulous.
I mean, December 25th, 2017 is when episode 1 dropped.
It was 1 year ago.
So
December 25th, 2017 was 1 year ago.
We yes. Don't do the math. It'll give you a headache.
So
Worse than an ice cream headache. An ice cream headache times like 1,000.
Podcast years or nanoseconds, right? Those are the pieces of time that we're working with. And I'd like to especially celebrate because the washer and dryer, I think, is finally winding down. It's still going a little bit, but of course, we're celebrating our 1 year anniversary, and that is such an important and exciting event that no one in this household gives a damn. They're just gonna throw every hammers and wrenches and aluminum filings into the dryer and turn it on full blast, turn on every blender, annoy every hyperactive dog within a 5 mile radius.
Maybe they're celebrating by making your whites whiter and your brights brighter.
Yes, all temperature. Hooray.
Yay.
So we've got clean clothes for celebrating, I guess.
So what is the 1 year anniversary for a podcast? I mean, does it work the same as marriage?
Oh, you mean is it silver or diamond?
I mean, should have I asked for a prenup like right before we recorded the first episode?
I think the 1 year is like the sweet and sour pork.
The XLR cable.
Something like that. I think maybe it's both. I don't know. Maybe you could just soak the XLR cables in sweet and sour sauce. That's what you do the first year.
Okay.
Weird, I don't know.
But, all right. I'll go back 3 years ago 2 years ago and.
No, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, however many years ago.
Do the math. Don't do the math. Sorry, don't do the math.
Don't do the math. Don't do the math. I didn't get into this business for math.
Math is hard.
I always ask the same question and it's how much math is that? How much math is that? And the answer is always too much math. Too much. Any amount of math is too much. So everybody is, of course, except my friends and family, everyone is excited about our 1 year. Well, not everybody, just like the people who listen to the podcast. Like, okay, Paul is really excited. Paul's Tid is really excited.
Yeah, Paul Tid. Yeah.
And
I was gonna say I'm not that excited, but
Anita's probably excited.
Dixie's dad.
Mm. So really, that's three people right there who are hugely excited that we have been talking to each other, having a 3 a.m. conversation that over a year that lasted 3 years. I think a lot of people are excited about
That's a really long 3 a.m. conversation.
I don't know. It could be different depending on which time zone you're in. I don't know.
Time zones may vary.
I never, ever understood podcasts. Like, I wasn't a podcast listener. And for the past, I want to say 10 years, people kept saying, you should have a podcast. You should have a podcast. Oh, do you do a podcast? And my answer was always, no, I don't. Should I? And then, I've been on and interviewed on many podcasts as a guest, and people always say, that was our highest rated episode of the year, the episode that we had you on. And I thought, wow. So there are a lot of people out there, a lot of my fans might be out there who might want to listen to Mr. Lobo on a podcast. And then we had Horror News Net actually wanted to produce a podcast with Mr. Lobo. And now I think Michael Joy is an amazing guy, and he was incredibly patient with me because I kept jerking him around for 2 years. But it just, I really just couldn't find a way to do a standard episode, a standard podcast thing. And I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to do it. So I just kind of kindly backed off of our, arrangement to do that together, and which was very kind of them to be that agreeing and to allow me to do something with Paul, because Paul and I were filming together for Cinema Insomnia and for other projects, and we would always have these long conversations at 3 a.m. after we were done filming. And a lot of those long conversations were about how much Paul wanted to produce a podcast, but didn't have the personnel or the subject matter to produce a podcast, I guess. It's just that he wanted to produce a podcast. And so it seemed like a perfect storm of, here's a guy who wants to have a podcast but doesn't want to produce a podcast. And a guy who wants to produce a podcast but maybe doesn't necessarily want to host a podcast.
Right.
And but anyhow, regardless, we've been doing it for a long time, and we're celebrating today by doing a double episode. This is going to be twice the show for you, a part A and a part B, a part 1 and a part 2, a part this and a part that.
Do you like number 1 or do you like number 2? Which is better?
Number 2.
Number 1?
Is this one or this one? Mm-hmm.
Right.
Number 1 or number 2?
Can you do it one more time? I can't tell.
All right. Do you like this one better or this one?
I'm going to go with 2.
Okay, 2. All right. Well, that's too bad because we're still in segment 1. But we'll have more segment 1 for you when we come back with this special double platinum edition of the Sleepless Nights of Insomnia 1-year anniversary.
How long has it been since you've held a pretty young girl in your arms? The naughty stewardesses would like to take care of your problem. Fly first class with the naughty stewardesses, the cutest, curviest, most caressable hostesses who will ever take care of you. If you're past 40, Debbie's for you. She likes older, more experienced men. If you're young with hot plans, check Jane. If a groovy soul sister's your dish, beautiful Barbara more than fills the bill. And for those way out scenes, don't miss Margie. Everything turns her on. The naughty stewardesses are what you think they are, and more. Each one is a piece of class. Come and meet the naughty stewardesses. You'll love their takeoff. All new, in color, rated R for adults.
You're not dreaming. You're listening to the Sleepless Nights podcast. I'm your humble host, Mr. Lobo, and we are here at OSI HQ, broadcasting live from the Black Knight satellite. And we're talking about doing a podcast. This is the pilot for the podcast. To my right is Mr. Paul Sanders of BESTOW TV. Hello, Paul.
I think that's me.
I think that's you too.
Yeah.
Paul is somehow, for some reason, thought it was okay to not wear pants to the studio.
I'm comfortable not wearing pants, you know?
But I'm not comfortable when you're not wearing pants.
It's not about your level of comfort.
It's not?
No, like, look at all the great directors. You know, Hitchcock always put his actresses on edge and stuff. This is me keeping you on top of your game.
This is your technique.
This is my technique. Because, you know, if I could be pantsless all the time, I would. I'd go to Comic-Con and I'd shoot Comic-Con videos with pants. I mean, look it up real quick. See if that pantslessproducer.com is open. Because I think
Pantslessproducer.com.
I think I'm going to go with that from now on.
That's going to be your thing, pantsless. Okay.
Well, at least for this minute.
All right. Well, Paul is got a new thing. He's got several things, and that's the problem, and he doesn't cover them up. But we are doing this podcast together for you. We understand that you want a podcast. People have been asking Mr. Lobo to do a podcast.
Are you asking me?
I'm not asking you.
Oh,
No.
okay.
I'm asking them. Well, I'm telling them that they've been asking me to do a podcast for many, many years. And whenever people bring up podcasts, they always say things like, oh, we love it because we love podcasts because the people are so unprofessional and they don't know what they're talking about. And they're half drunk most of the time. And they're, always, saying things that don't make much sense and don't stay on the topic. And we just love that. It's just a couple of guys talking about themselves and trying to make important topics of the day about themselves.
Holy cats. It's hard to believe that was 1 to 3 years ago when we were doing our very first podcast. We established so many of the key elements or format aspects of the podcast.
Now, was that 1 to 3 or 1 and or 3 years ago?
Maybe 1 and or 3. 51 episodes ago. When we started this thing, kind of coming out of the music, and we had that theme, the podcast theme that Mars Homeworld did, which is so amazing, gets it off to the right start. And then I used to do this thing like, and you just heard it, and to my right is Paul Sanders, and producer, and then you're not wearing any pants, and so right away it's like pantsless producer joke gets seated.
Yes.
Which has
gotten much, much worse over as time went on. I mean, you're just talking about that I don't wear proper Christian attire. I don't wear suit pants. I wear khakis and stuff like that. And
well, that's a joke. That's a joke I always say. Yeah, you're not wearing Christian clothes, which is of course just a funny way of obviously I'm not making those kind of moral judgments on people, but it is kind of a funny discrepancy because I'm kind of a clothes horse. I kind of like to wear slacks and button-down shirts, and Paul's always wearing like sloppy sweats or cargo shorts or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Even in a professional aspect, they're
yeah,
shorts
at
with
a
the
job
pockets.
interview or at a funeral.
But then it's
it's
morphed to the point where it's like I just don't wear anything anymore, and I'm waiting for the slash fiction to come out.
Oh no. So it was funny to just say, of course, on a podcast where nobody can see you, it was funny to just sort of start talking about the fact that one of the hosts is just not wearing pants. And, that's an easy joke. I think it kind of calls back to even Kentucky Fried Movie, right? You don't see what the newscaster is wearing under the desk, so he says he's not wearing any pants. I mean, that's an easy joke. But
right.
we kind of We've taken an easy joke and made it difficult. We made it complicated.
We've slathered 1 to 3 years on top of that.
Yeah. But the other thing that about that intro, of course, as I said, Paul Sanders is to the right of me. We did that for a while, and to my right is Paul Sanders, because we kind of, at least in my mind, I wanted to bring some sort of radio theater, even before we actually did real radio theater on the podcast. I wanted to have that theater of the mind thing where, you're imagining us sitting together. And it was kind of something that was important to me in the beginning, is to try to give a texture or set the scene for some of the things that we were doing. And so that it's not just people talking at you, you're kind of getting drawn in, and you're living their lives or our lives with us, or we're all living our lives together. And there's a sort of illusion that rather than it's just something where we're just talking at you and complaining about other people's work.
And then there was my job of just being a complete and utter jackass and then trying to ruin that illusion, because 90% of the time I was right directly across from him. So I was neither to his left nor his right, which became an ongoing thing for a while as well, because it's like, well, I'm not to your left or your right. I'm looking right directly at you.
Right.
And so you're trying to make illusions, and I'm just breaking the illusions.
Popping the balloon at every turn, which is another interesting aspect to our dynamic. And I think that one of the things that became even stranger is that, it went from us pretending to be someplace to really being places like, you know, the airport and the laundromat and stuff like that.
And the car.
The car and the driving
the
in the car. How did we have, 4 episodes in the car?
4 episodes. Well, what's funny is we had 4 episodes. 1 episode picking up Aaron, 1 episode taking Aaron back, I believe. And it was like, oh, we pick up Aaron, we take Aaron, or no. So we go down to get Aaron. So we're picking up Aaron, and then we're bringing Aaron back to Camp Lobo. And then it's like, oh, then we're going to record all these episodes in between. And then we're going to do it again. We're going to take Aaron back to the airport, and then we're going to record our adventures back home.
Right?
No, we never did. So it just was 4 episodes, 4 hours really, of us just riding around in a car.
So, and then it ended up that we weren't in the same place at all when we came back to doing the podcast again after the outbreak and the apes and the apes and the chronic diarrhea. It wasn't as easy for us to, you know, there were entirely new worlds and ways we could pretend and try to, you know, create that theater of the mind, since we had to do it differently, keep it going, but do it differently.
And it's so odd about that, because there are episodes where we've recorded in this situation. Because generally speaking, I would come down and we would try to record a handful of episodes together, not knowing when the next time I'd be down in your area, your neck of the woods. And it got to a point where it's like, I couldn't necessarily run down all the time. We were kind of running behind on producing episodes. So we were doing it over the internet with like the worst internet connections possible. Not like the internet connections now are optimal, but the internet connections then were way worse, to the degree where it's like, I don't want to shoot like this. I don't want to do podcasts this way because this is so annoying.
Yeah, it was cutting out constantly, and we'd have to keep repeating ourselves.
But then to the point now where this is the only way we produce podcasts is that way.
Yeah, it is weird.
And I've come 360.
The mainstay.
Or I've 360, 180. I've done 180 where it's like, well, I kind of like it now, because our audio is captured separately, so I've got some liberties to kind of edit and tweak. And
yeah, I do feel like there was some nice chemistry of actually being in the same room, and I think that it would be nice to do that sometime again if we can afford the opportunity.
Right, totally.
You know, we would just need, I guess, to have it set up to where we can record each other separately, but still be.
Right. We just in our own little booths. We just make these like little booths, these chronic diarrhea proof booths that we just sit and look at each other.
You can sit in one car, and then I'll sit in another car.
I sit in my car, and
we
you sit in
can do
yours.
it 4 different. We can point the cars at each other, look at each other through the windshields, and then we can kind of have the best of all worlds.
The best of no worlds.
So.
How is whatever you're eating? How's that taste?
It's delicious.
Is it?
It's kind of like a teriyaki rice thing with fish.
Gross.
I think that's the anniversary. I think it's the teriyaki fish anniversary. And cold coffee. Teriyaki fish cold coffee is the 1 year.
Yeah.
Anniversary.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, you can't see me, but I'm holding up the fucking dog shit card, so, which I believe I don't even own anyway. So.
No, I have the fucking dog shit card, Paul. I take it with me to every convention. It's a little orange card that Paul made that has a little Scotty dog with a couple little poops behind him. If we could say poops, can we say poops?
I don't know. Just say shit.
That was a reoccurring joke that we don't do anymore, where we would say, can we say whatever the bad word is? And then we've already said it, so it's already happened on the show.
Right.
And then the answer is always no.
Okay.
But it just happens anyway.
Wasn't like, I believe one of the episodes too was like, can we say this word? And you say no. And then I say something that's like 10 times worse than that word anyway.
Right. A lot of reoccurring gags. But, yeah, you know, I think that it's interesting because Eric Miller, who is in what was the one with the we were at the restaurant, the real restaurant. We were at the Jenny's Diner with Eric Miller.
Episode 16, A Special Guest.
A special guest. Was he our first guest?
Might be, because Sleazy and the other person that we're not allowed to talk about came like 2 or 3 episodes after that. Unless you count Aaron and Dixie.
Okay. I mean, I guess anyone besides you and I are a guest, I suppose.
Right.
To the podcast. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, but yeah, he's a podcast listener. He is one of those people who kept saying you should have a podcast, or, I love podcasts. Listen to this one, listen to this one, listen to these 10 other ones, and I'm always like, I don't have that kind of time to listen to podcasts. But he listened to them. He and his friend Will, who also works on Midnight Frights. They would listen to our podcast. And it was interesting because his feeling is that we spent a lot of time resisting the format of a podcast, and that's mostly me. But I just wanted the audience to know where I was coming from, and that I wasn't going to provide them with business as usual. We pretty much are business as unusual as possible. But he was saying that since these new ones, we've really kind of settled into our own format, and we're not resisting anymore. We're kind of going with it and making the most of it. So I think that that's a nice compliment, and I think my attitude has slightly improved over the past year, and I do like the fact that we've been have kept it creative and have kept breaking new ground and breaking new wind, right, Paul?
Sure.
All right. Well, we're gonna break right now, and then we'll be right back with more Sleepless Nights of Insomnia, the anniversary special.
Something incredible happened in the 1981 band camp at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. An extraordinary arrangement of a simple hymn, Amazing Grace, burst into the proud 60-year heritage of the IUP marching band. What followed that moment for 40 years and counting is an emotional attachment to that song that inspired a spark within performers and listeners alike. A film depicting that first profound moment of Amazing Grace and the many that followed will chronicle the history of the song's enduring impact and shine the light on the remarkable power of music. Help us tell that story. Donate at gofundme.com. Amazing Grace, the making of a tradition. Any amount given will be greatly appreciated, and all donations of $30 and over will receive a free copy of the film upon its completion. Become a backer today. Thanks for your support.
You're not dreaming. We are back with our anniversary edition of Sleep. What is it, Paul?
This would be perfect for the anniversary. How'd you know it was up? Anyway, this would be perfect for the. This would be perfect for the anniversary episode. A lot of people have been asking about Chris Jericho and what's going on with Chris Jericho. You mentioned it a couple times in past episodes, but we never actually tackle it. How about we tackle it and go?
Chris Jericho? I don't know if I know a Chris Jericho.
You know the professional wrestler?
Oh, that guy. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Chris Irvine, Fozzy, Y2J Jericho. Is that who we're talking about?
I think so.
Okay. Yes, he is a wrestler, WWE, originally. I think he's been fired since, right?
He has his own league now. AEW, I believe, is his his
he's
thing.
in a league by himself.
He's in a league of his own,
literally in a league of
of
his
which
own.
he gets to be champion, even though it's his own league. Makes
That
sense.
doesn't make any sense at all. So, I'm not a huge wrestling fan. I mean, I watched wrestling with my grandpa a lot in the 70s and the 80s. So the guys that I got to see were like Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan and people like that. Roddy Piper. Those are the guys that I really appreciated. Macho Man Randy Savage. I thought all that stuff was really fun. American kabuki, as I like to call it. And you have good guys and you have bad guys. You have the angel and you have the heel, usually.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Snap to a Slim Jim. Now, we weren't supposed to talk about that guy.
Oh.
Anyway, so we're doing a horror film festival, Sacramento Horror Film Festival. We're showing a movie called Albino Farm. And for whatever reason, I guess horror movie directors are always looking for unusual casting for their movies, because it always seems like wrestlers always get cast with acting roles in horror films. It goes all the way back to Plan 9 from Outer Space with Tor Johnson as the Walking Dead. So Chris Jericho's in this horror film, and I feel like he's only in the movie for like 10 minutes. But he's there at the festival as a special guest. And I am just the host of the festival. And the director of the film is there. And Chris Jericho has been drinking. And, he's got a couple of girls with him, and he is drinking, and he's up in the balcony, kind of leaning over the balcony and making cracks and acting weird. And the organizer says, I don't think Chris Jericho is going to come up on stage because he's had too much to drink. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it's just going to be me doing Q&A with the director then. Yeah, he's not going to do it because he's too drunk. I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. I'll just do Q&A with the director. It's fine. So then finally they're like, no, he's going to do it just before we're ready to go. It's like, oh, okay, all right. So I've got the director up there, and the director, I think the director barely got to say 3 words the whole time he was there. Now, he's the guy who made the movie. Chris Jericho's in the movie for 10 minutes. Chris Jericho comes up on stage. He just takes the whole stage over, and he starts somehow going into his heel routine. He starts making fun of, we were showing Repo the Genetic Opera, and we have at that show probably the most renowned shadow cast of that movie. They do like a Rocky Horror style shadow cast. So they have like full set pieces and costumes from the movie, and they do a really amazing job with this thing, and it's really important to them. And he just starts trashing it and trashing the fans of that. And that's the next thing that's going to be showing. So everyone there in the audience is there to see that thing that he's tearing down.
You don't have to say you like it if you didn't like it. A little bit different from the typical horror fare. A lot better than that repo bullshit you'll see tomorrow night. That's just me talking. Whoa, listen, Paris Hilton. Come on, guys. Seriously? Fuck, come on, man.
And then he starts, really just, again, insulting horror fans in general, calling them nerds. And then I do this joking thing where I kind of take his drink and pretend to smell it. Like, is it alcohol or... And then he says, it's apple juice, fag. That's his retort when I pretended to smell his drink as a joke.
So, and the Q&A comes to a screeching halt.
Exactly. Crickets.
I'm just kidding, by the way. Please, everyone. It's apple juice,
Yes,
you
apple
fag.
juice, right.
Which was fine. I mean, we kept going. It wasn't like, I'm like, oh, he called me a fag. Oh. No, I mean,
you should have loaded up the boot and gave him some Sweet Chin music.
Yeah, that's right.
Isn't that where this story's going?
No.
Oh,
Loaded
okay.
up the boot and gave him some Sweet Chin music. Oh, God. I'm just trying to keep the show moving. And then he just starts calling me Haji. And I'm assuming because I'm brown, I guess, like I'm thinking like the turban-headed kid from the Johnny Quest cartoons. Like maybe that's the only brown guy he's ever seen in his life. I don't know.
What was that? Actually, let me tell the whole story if I
Okay.
can interrupt you.
Sure.
Man with the green and black tie. I will call you Haji from now
Fine.
on.
Okay.
Now let me say
You
this.
already asked
but
them
hold,
that.
but hold on a second, Haji.
Between the racial slurs and the lifestyle slurs, it kind of turned into this situation where, and he knew right away that that TMZ was going to have a field day with this, and maybe he did it all on purpose. I don't know. He basically called out TMZ and said, Chris Jericho hates fags, blah blah blah. Like there, he was already kind of making fun of how TMZ was going to turn this into a another smear on him, or smear / publicity, right? TMZ was a tabloid television program, if people don't know that, a nationally distributed tabloid TV program. I don't know if was it for Fox, or I don't know who.
I don't know.
Maybe it's
Was it Fox or
syndicated.
I think it might have been just a syndicated show.
But anyhow, I just kind of forgot about it. Like, even though it was kind of annoying on stage to deal with a guy who was a little drunk. I'm a host of a show. It was a 3-day festival. That was like 25 minutes of a 3-day festival, that I had to keep going. So, I wasn't like going, oh my gosh, he called me a fag and then he said I was brown. So it wasn't like that. It was just this interesting thing where it was like, boy, that was kind of a pain in the ass. But, we kind of kept the show going and, we survived it. And, another show for the books. Everybody had a good time for the most part. And there we go. And then 2 weeks later, the thing just exploded. Like TMZ had footage of him on stage calling me a fag. Then it was this thing of like, a host of festival calls Chris Jericho insensitive a-hole. And it was like, well, wait a second. I didn't say any of those things. And so like TMZ is like putting all these words in my mouth and kind of painting me as this victim. I talk to them on the phone and I try to tell them my side of the story. And, they say, would you accept an apology from Chris Jericho? And it's like, I don't need an apology from Chris Jericho, but I don't think an apology from him would be genuine, even if I got one. And so it was this thing where they just made it seem like we were having like this feud. And they did a couple of shows on it. And I felt completely powerless in the situation because even if they interviewed me, even if they got my words or what I said, they didn't ever, my side of the story was never told. So I did a fake press conference that I allowed them to have first use of for their website, where I kind of make fun of myself and I make fun of the festival. I make fun of Chris Jericho. I make fun of TMZ. I just pretty much lampoon the whole thing. And I did a 7-minute press conference as Mr. Lobo. And I've got a neck brace on. So it even seems more ridiculous, where I somehow broke my collarbone being insulted by Chris Jericho, Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Certainly with everything else happening in the world, Mr. Lobo is glad that you've chosen to cover what Americans really care about. Drunken celebrities embarrassing themselves and or other people in public. I was trying to save Chris Jericho from himself. You have to pay for this, Chris Jericho. Chris Irvine, Lionheart, Fozzy, Y2J Jericho. You call yourself a wrestler? You're going to come to my town and act like a drunken fancy pants blowhard and at one of my film shows and insult my fellow film geeks? Not in my America. I think that it added a lot to the idea that the whole thing was a ploy for publicity from the get-go. I know that Chris Jericho had told TMZ that we had planned it from the very beginning and that we had a laugh and a beer afterwards. Really, a laugh and a beer. Obviously, someone who does not know Mr. Lobo. Can you imagine me in a bar with a wrestler having a laugh and a beer?
Well, he had the laugh and the beer.
He had all of it by himself. So, it was a really kind of a thing where I felt powerless. Everyone was getting publicity except for me. And I just did this thing because I couldn't leave my house. I was getting 400 pieces of emails and messages and, a day from angry wrestling fans who wanted to beat my ass because they thought I was riding his coattails or, playing victim to get publicity or whatever. So it was very scary for me. I was afraid to leave my house, and it was kind of it was a worldwide phenomenon. They interviewed Hulk Hogan and asked him what he thought of the Mr. Lobo incident. I have an incident named after me. Hulk Hogan talked about my incident in an interview.
So listen here, brothers and sisters. Hulkamania wants to talk about the Mr. Lobo incident.
Eat your vegetables every day. I don't know how I became Nixon.
I don't know. I was trying to figure out what my dialect was because it certainly wasn't him.
Mateys.
Arr,
brother. Oh, God. We're not doing the anchor spot anymore, Paul. Sorry. So, this was a situation where I did this fake press conference, and it came off as it was funny, and I sort of basically forced people to accept me on my own terms, not as a victim, not as a person who's in a feud with a celebrity, but as a guy who does humor, and has a sense of humor about himself and doesn't take himself or anyone else too seriously. It was interesting because it deflated the whole thing like a balloon. Like as scary as it was, like me being afraid to leave my house and getting all these negative response, and everyone from all over the world calling me on the phone going, is this thing happening? Are you in this feud with Chris Jericho? And then it just turned to vapor, like that one little bit of satire, that one little kind of inkling of self-awareness just deflated the whole thing like a balloon. And I felt like I could go outside again. I felt like I took control of it. I don't think it helped me in any way. I don't think that I earned any fans from that. I know Chris Jericho lost a lot of fans from that. What was interesting is he tweeted that Mr. Lobo's the man. So, I challenged him to a thumb wrestling match. I guess I should have mentioned that. In the press conference, I challenged him to a thumb wrestling match to settle it because I have got this, beefy thumb from using my TV remote control, and I could take him in a thumb wrestling match, which he conceded basically. He said I was the man, and that I'm not a sheriff, which I guess is a reference to the Sheriff Lobo show, which shows that he's probably 50 years old. Just like I am, to remember when Sheriff Lobo was a TV show. I'm basically an indoor kid with poor diet and no exercise. But I still have some pride, probably. And I challenge you. I issue this challenge, Chris Irvine, Lionheart, Fozzy, Y2J, Jericho. You and me, I will wrestle you. That's right, I said wrestle. Anywhere, anytime. Of course, Mr. Lobo is not, butch enough to wrestle you like they do in the WWW, A&W, NOW, or whatever. But this thumb is a monster. This is my TV remote thumb, and it's got your name on it. So wrestle me if you're man enough. We'll see who the real tough guy is. Ow. Thank you. Thank you very much. It is interesting how it went from being this huge worldwide international scandal to just absolutely nothing. But the interesting thing about that is that, he didn't accept my thumb wrestling match, although the actor who played Zach the Lego Maniac in the Lego cartoons wanted to do a spoof where I do a thumb wrestling match. So we actually did something for his YouTube channel where I get into an altercation with Zach the Lego Maniac. And I was on all these radio shows, talk shows, all of these things, just because someone insulted me. And it's really interesting because, you have people going, "Oh, you were on TV." It's like, I'm on TV every week. I have a syndicated TV show. I'm on in 45 markets. And you're going to "Oh, I saw you on TMZ. You're valid now." And it's interesting, this thing where it's like, it's the thing everyone wants to talk about, and it's the thing that people are impressed by. And it's a thing that I didn't do anything to earn. It doesn't reflect any of my talents or abilities or interests. It's just something that happened to me, So it shows you a lot of how celebrity works. But it was a very weird thing, but it's a thing that just keeps coming up like a bad penny. It's the thing that everybody wants to talk about. That and Scooby-Doo, me having a character based on me on Scooby-Doo, again, which is another thing I didn't have to earn. It was just sort of something that just someone decided to make a character that looks like Mr. Lobo. It's not my voice. It doesn't contain any of my ideas, but it is interesting, when you work really hard and you try to make a show, and the things that people celebrate you and know you for have nothing to do with any of that.
Chris Jericho on the Mr. Lobo incident, November 24th, 2009. It's frustrating, but I guess it's just the world we live in nowadays. So you have to be careful with what you say, because nobody has a sense of humor or really understands when you're just shooting the breeze with your friends. So, I got my slap on the wrist. And I'm very, 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 very sorry to anybody who was offended.
Howdy, and welcome to another exciting episode of Redneck TV. Today's show, we take an in-depth look at one of the Ozarks' most common indigenous species, backwoods hillbilly. Our first sighting, a few miles back, roadkill and the gassy things that eat it happened so fast we couldn't get pictures.
Some stones is best left unturned. You can bury the past, but that don't mean it didn't happen. Even though it's all chained up and forgotten. A bit of those who were done wrong still remain. Right through there's the farm.
There's something wrong with this place.
We just need to find someone who's friendly.
No, don't do this to me.
Truth is, there was all kinds kept there.
All kinds of what?
Damned souls.
I promise you, you won't be disappointed.
Well, Mr. Lobo, I'm happy to say that since you are talking about Chris Jericho, we have a very special guest, and he's behind door number 1. It is, and we don't even have a door number 1. We don't have.
Oh, wow! For a second there, I thought it was going to be Chris Jericho behind that door. Yeah. Chris Jericho. Now, I don't know if him having any connection to horror movie hosts whatsoever, and then he was on this last season with Joe Bob Briggs, and then I'm like, is he just trying to get under my skin?
Yeah.
Or are the people from Joe Bob's camp going, is John Brennan going, well, Mr. Lobo had a run-in with Chris Jericho. Maybe we should just have Chris Jericho on our show. Maybe he'll call Joe Bob a fag. I don't know. Maybe that will help our publicity for our horror host.
Maybe he saw the Y2J reference in the House special, and
yes, just that jogged his whole memory.
Just that one little thing that's not even brought up and never mentioned. Although we did a watch party, for that one, and a lot of people were reading the stuff on the box, and they got a lot of giggles, and a lot of people were like, because that episode was shot in 2016, which was
Yeah.
the last end of the world. And a lot of people were like, yeah, we need to redo that and add 2020 on there. But then they were questioning, why was Y2J on there?
Yeah.
Luckily, you have it on your Wikipedia, so they all read about that.
Yeah. Well, we had yes, because everyone had the Y2K scare where they thought that all the computers were going to lose their minds when 1999 clicked over to 2000, and so everyone thought all the banks were going to collapse, and it was going to cause this domino effect that was going to ruin everything. And for whatever reason, since Y2K was such a buzzword, Chris Jericho called himself Y2J, right? And then we decided that on Mr. Lobo's bug out box with all of his emergency supplies, he would have all of the ends of the world crossed out. You know, every time the end of the world would pass, he would cross it out and write the next thing that bug out box is for. So Y2K was on there and Y2J was on there. Anyway, I guess I'm spending too much time talking about this thing that's not our show, not the podcast. We've had a lot of guests on the show. We've never had Chris Jericho on this show, but
we're working on it. Maybe we can get the action figure or something.
I feel like Sleazy P. Martini belongs in the wrestling world somehow. I don't know why they haven't tapped him for anything, because I feel like he would be perfect in that universe.
Well, most all the other members of GWAR have been in wrestling in one form or another. I mean, they're all wrestlers as well as singers.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Again, not our show, but for creative continuity, I think there's some clips of one of the singers doing a match in his costume.
Oh, wow.
And I think the premise of the comic book that Sleazy talks about is that their side jobs, some of their side jobs are being professional wrestlers.
Yeah, I think when we interviewed him, they talked about the backstory of GWAR and that Sleazy was their manager, and that was kind of like the first thing he tried them as wrestlers before rock stars. But as wrestlers, they just were killing everyone in the ring. He decided that if they were rock stars, they killed their disaffected fans, that the fans wouldn't be missed, whereas a famous wrestler that gets murdered in the ring would be missed, I guess. Like that's the logic of it, because they're still killing people,
right?
They're still slaughtering people. You know, there's still alien Vikings that are slaughtering people, but they're doing it in a rock band, which is much more acceptable than doing it as a wrestler. But yeah, Sleazy P. Martini was a great interview, and probably, would you say, one of our most listened to episodes?
Probably. It's probably ranked up there fairly high.
And then Corey Maccabee, which that was kind of my first attempt of trying to interview someone in this newer setup. It's not the clearest recording in the world, but we definitely will have to try it again, because I always love talking to Corey, and we really had a great time with him. Filming segments for him at the It's Modern Art Gallery. Paul helped us shoot some video for Corey there. A great creative guy, a director of the American Astronaut. Corey Maccabee is one of our friends, and we have his stuff on OSI sometimes, and he's just great. And then Eric Miller, of course, I already mentioned. We had him on at the diner. We talked to Wes Shank at our very first Blobcast with Dr. Frankenstone. And what was wonderful about that is that, one, it was great to just capture that moment in time with Wes before he passed away. And the other thing is, it's kind of started a tradition of covering Blobfest as part of the podcast. And so we did this year, we had kind of expanded it even further into a whole month-long Blobtober extravaganza, right? Which is not really, doesn't make sense because it's June or July, but that's going to be our Blobtober from now on. We'll do 4 weeks. We'll try to do 4 weeks of Blobfest.
Fast forward to next year when it's 8 weeks.
Then it just turns into just the Blobcast, where it's all year long.
We just have a spin-off series.
About the Blob. But so that was a lot of interesting guests on that, not just Frankenstone and Wes Schenk. Wes Schenk was the curator of the Blob. Dr. Frankenstone is one of the organizers and one of the earlier founders of that show. And Chuck Francisco, who is Dash Daring, who is the intrepid Blobfest reporter who you see as part of the event, and was the host this past year for the Runout, the online version of the Runout. And we also had Miss Blobfest 2018, 2019, and 2020, right? We had all the incarnations of Miss Blobfest for the past
plus the OG
3 years.
Miss Blobfest.
Yeah, that's right. Dixie de la Morto Lobo, who was the original Miss Blobfest. That's right.
Those episodes under duress.
Yes. And then we even had Wendy Soes, who not only played a ghoul as part of the Spook Show antics on stage, but used to come to Blobfest before any of us. She was at the some of the very earliest Blobfest when it was a free show.
And I think that having them a part of that was the very prime situation, that they were a major part. They were more of a part of that show than I was. So I felt it was very, very important to have them in it, and I think it paid off very well.
Oh, it's nice to hear that you were pleased with how that turned out. I'm glad it all turned out well. It was like, again, the show is always an experiment, so it's until it's all put together, it's hard to know if it works. But I do think that we've got a lot of aspects. Kat, of course. I forgot about Miss Kat, our young costume contest winner. So many different aspects for the Blobcast. So we've all had wonderful guests on the show. I think it's exciting, and even with the pod drama, like having other people participate in it. It's nice to have different voices on the show and not just the same voices. And hopefully going forward, we could plug in more and more guests for the show.
Now, what's a pod drama? I don't know what you're talking about there. We did a pod drama?
You don't know about a pod drama, Paul?
No, I think I missed that one.
It's like a radio drama, it's sort of an adventure for an entire podcast. We are doing a scripted, I feel like I'm doing the commercial, the highly scripted and ham-fisted adventure, where it's us doing a dramatic story.
Sounds fun. Sorry I missed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe I'll get invited for the next one.
Yeah. It's weird because I thought you wrote it and we're all over it, but it's too bad you don't remember it.
If you say so.
Okay. All right. That's fine. So, I don't know. How much more do we have of this? Should we just wrap this up?
We need 3 more minutes. Don't peter out yet. So maybe you gotta tune in for hour 2.
All right.
Why did we even agree to 2 hours of this shit? I mean, we could barely get through an hour, and it's like, we're only halfway.
Why did we agree to an hour? That seems like way too much show.
Why couldn't we just kept our mouths shut? Oh, wait, because we like making things complicated.
Yes, we do like making things complicated. And I feel like the pod drama is the ultimate of that, right? I mean, I feel like that there's more work in that one episode than any 5 episodes.
That was 3 years in the making, just on that episode alone.
3 years in the making, or
sure.
1 year?
Whichever.
I mean, how is it? I mean, I understand how is it 3 years to make? Just because it's something that we wanted to do from the beginning?
No, I feel like it's just something that it just felt like 3 years making the damn thing.
It's a culmination of things.
Didn't it
right?
wasn't it originally supposed to be? It was supposed to drop in mid-30s, and then it just kept getting pushed off.
Yeah.
Which is actually, I mean, having it pushed back was a positive, because then just more things just kept getting added to it.
Well, but I mean, I've done radio theater, like I said, for 9 years. And when you were going, okay, well, I want to do a radio drama, and I was thinking we drop that in a couple weeks. I'm like, this is going to take you more time to do this than you think. It's not going to be as easy to put out as a regular podcast. It's going to be a lot harder.
Especially considering we ramp everything to a freaking 11, and it's like, oh, well, let's not just do people talking. Let's add sound effects and robot voices and musical cues and
and
add more people. And
I mean, we're going all over the place. We're on an island. We're out in outer space.
Spoilers. Oh, wait. They should have heard it by now.
There's not spoilers. No, it's already happened. We almost collide into a sun. We've got talking computers. There's so many things happening in that. There's so many layers to it. Like I said, I hope that people give it a listen and give it maybe a couple listens, because really I feel like that I think even I worked on it, and I feel like when I listened to it, I missed a bunch of things the first time.
Give it a lot of shares, give it a lot of likes, get a lot of stuff behind it, because we want to make the sequel, damn it.
Yeah,
and exactly. We're going to make it 2 episodes from now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you gave yourself 2 whole weeks. 2 whole weeks to do that again. This is great. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about our another epic podcast in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. That will happen in 4 weeks.
But I'm very excited about what we're doing now. This is our exciting double dish, double stuff anniversary special Sleepless Nights podcast. Stay with us.
You have been listening to the Sleepless Nights podcast, or should we say pODDcast.
Oddcast.
Emphasis on the odd. Our theme is by Mars Homeworld at Deadhouse Music. Our opening announcement is by Ophelia Necro. She does a radio show called Suicide Watch. And you could reach Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com, or find me on YouTube, YouTube/Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO. Mr. Lobo on Facebook, Facebook/MR.LOBO, or on Twitter, at Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO.
Or you can find myself, Paul Sanders, or better known as Bestow TV, at bestow.tv. On YouTube /Bestow TV, on Twitter at Bestow Prod, PROD, and on Facebook, Bestow TV.
If you want to place an advertisement with this podcast, and gosh, why wouldn't you? We could be talking about you right now. Contact us, Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com. That's MRLOBO @CINEMAINSOMNIA.com. Or support us on Patreon. Patreon supporters get to hear this podcast before anyone else, and a lot of other great stuff, right, Paul?
Sure.
Doesn't get it better than that, right? So come join the fun at
patreon.com/Sleepless Nights Podcast.
That's
patreon.com/Sleepless Nights Podcast.
Please stay up with us next week for another Sleepless Nights podcast. Or should we say, pODDcast.
Podcast.
The best thing about being an insomniac is never having to say goodnight.
Good night.